So, the Oscars are tonight, and in preparation for what is considered the biggest night in movies, I decided to do something slightly unhinged. Only slightly. I watched every movie that was nominated for Best Picture at the 98th Academy Awards. That meant 10 movies, for a total of 1,552 minutes, or just over 25 hours of movies. Now, I did not just sit on my couch and vibe through all of these movies. I came prepared. I made a scorecard for every single movie, because if I'm going to suffer through 25 hours of cinema in the name of, well, content, also, I have to get my pretentious card in somehow. I was at least going to be organized about this whole process. Each film got graded across 6 different categories: story, characters, visuals, craft, directing, and impact. Each category got a letter grade, and I averaged them out to give each film an overall score. Think of it like a report card, except instead of your mom getting disappointed, it's me and the Academy. Some of these movies absolutely deserve their nominations. They are stunning and thoughtful pieces of art that remind me why I love cinema. And some of them absolutely did not deserve to be on this list. Some of them genuinely ruined me emotionally in ways that I was not prepared for, and I had to sit and think about for a while. So let's go through all 10 Best Picture nominees: the good, the confusing, the ones that made me cry, the ones I don't fully understand. And we're doing this in a very specific order, so buckle up. First up is Marty Supreme. Okay, full transparency, I did not watch this movie this week. I watched every other movie this week except for this one. Now, before you come for me, this is not a bad movie. I genuinely really enjoyed it the first time. But this is the kind of film where once is genuinely enough. You only have to watch this movie once. And the unfortunate reality is that I've seen it twice now, and once was in IMAX, because the first time apparently wasn't enough of a lesson. The reason I say that once is enough comes down to one simple little name: Timothée Chalamet. Now, this has nothing to really do with his recent controversy. He plays Marty so insufferably well that spending another 2+ hours with this man is just something that my nervous system genuinely just doesn't want to do ever again. This movie is extremely character heavy. And the thing is, every single character in this movie has real depth except for Marty. Real complexities reveal themselves over time in every character except for Marty. You genuinely care about them. You genuinely root for them. And then there's Marty, who is essentially a one-dimensional wrecking ball for about 95% of the movie. He is the same person in scene 1 as he is the same person in scene 100. And I want to be clear about this. Timothée Chalamet absolutely nailed this character. He played Marty so uncomfortably well, but the writing keeps Marty so tunnel vision focused on ping pong and himself that it becomes genuinely frustrating. Not in a compelling way, just in like, I want to shake him till his brains fall out kind of way. The redeeming thing is very brief. The final moment where we finally get a glimpse of that scared kid, and I really wish we had gotten more of that throughout the film. Let us see what he's afraid of. Let us see his cracks. The production and costume design in this movie are incredible. The film is set in 1950s New York. Are you from New York even? And it does something really, really smart. It feels very authentic to that era without being cartoonish about it, without being in your face saying, hey, look, I'm the 50s here. There are no phones. The outfits are period accurate. The world feels lived in, but it never, again, shoves the decade in your face. It's not performing the 50s, it's existing in the 50s. And that restraint is honestly really difficult to pull off. I love Marty's suits. I love Rachel's outfits. And seeing Odessa's outfits in this movie compared to I Love LA, and honestly, she pulls them all off. She pulls off every outfit in this movie and in I Love LA. I really did love Marty's suits though. His suits were tea. And here's where I have to be honest, even if it's a little bit harsh. This movie, low-key, high-key, had no cultural impact. Don't shoot, okay? Don't shoot. It came out, people watched it, that was kind of it. The only real takeaway or message that this film has is dream big, but don't be an asshole about it, which is okay, that's fine. It's a valid message. Follow your dreams. Don't be an asshole about it. But for a movie competing for the most prestigious award in cinema, you need to give more than that. It has to give more than that. And when you stack it up to what everything else on this list is, Marty Supreme just doesn't have that extra weight. So Marty Supreme's scorecard is story B, character C+, visuals C, craft A, A, directing C, impact C minus for an average grade of B minus. Let's talk about Frankenstein because this movie really did a lot for me. I love this movie. Let me start by saying, yes, this does deviate from the original story that Mary Shelley wrote. And I know that matters to a lot of people. It matters to me. This is a perfect example of how an adaptation can stray from its original source material, but still be profoundly faithful to it. Because at its core, it is telling the same story. The same themes are intact. The same message is intact. There are many different messages in the original Frankenstein. There are many different messages in this movie. Of course, the central one being you can't play God without consequences. And it is woven into every single scene in this movie. The smartest decision Guillermo del Toro made was splitting this movie into 3 parts. We all know the story of Frankenstein. Frankenstein is one of the, if not the most adapted novel of all time when it comes to film. We've seen it 100 times. We've heard it 100 times. We know the story of Frankenstein. So what do you do with that? How do you keep people engaged for a story they already know? They've already seen 100 times. We have a million adaptations of it. What makes this one special? We are given a perspective we're never really given before, and that is the creatures. And that completely changes everything. I also really love the deliberate parallels between Victor and his father, and how it was almost forced down your throat so that you cannot deny that Victor is also a monster. And it was done in the best way. Both men, in their own ways, were trying to play God. Victor's father with him, and Victor obviously cheating death. Both wanted complete, unchallenged control over their creations. The cycle of it feels suffocating, which it absolutely should, because it absolutely is. Jacob Elordi was insane in this, and I absolutely cannot overstate how good his performance as the creature was. This man is what? 6'5", and somehow made the creature feel so gentle, curious, and almost childlike, until of course he was pushed too far and he started killing people. But hey, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Most of his performance lives in his face and his body language. There is almost no dialogue from him in majority of the early portions of this film, and he carries the entire scene on expression alone. Jacob Elordi has come a long way since The Kissing Booth, and every single accolade that he gets or should get or has been nominated for this performance is very well deserved. It's just a shame that it was followed up by Wuthering Heights. This is probably the most visually stunning movie on this list, and that comes down to the quality of it. And I don't say that lightly because there are some really pretty movies on this list. The quality of what was produced here is almost so overwhelming, so immersive, it's so smooth, and so consistently gorgeous that it starts to feel like there's a play in front of you rather than a movie on a screen. And critically, you can see what's going on. When it's dark, you can see what's going on. The screen isn't just a black void with shapes in it. You can see, which is apparently a luxury in 2026. Netflix, however, will pay for not giving this movie the theatrical run it deserves. I can't even imagine what it would be like to watch this movie in IMAX, because trust me, if it got the theatrical run it deserved, I would have been in IMAX every single day until the movie was not in theaters anymore. Actually, I would have single-handedly kept that movie in theaters for like ever. Guillermo del Toro, come get your baddie shame. This man is the THEE monster movie director. But what makes him so singular is that in his films, the monster is almost never actually the monster. He has a very incredible and signature way of pulling you in to whatever is being labeled as a freak of nature, and then slowly patiently revealing what the true horror actually is. And how the physical creature is usually a manifestation of something much more human and much more ugly. I feel like this film really made people realize on the mass scale just how incredible of a filmmaker Guillermo del Toro is, and how deeply he cares about cinema as an art form. And everyone wants him adapting classic monster literature now, and you know what? Give him as much money as he needs and give him all the rights to every book ever. When this movie dropped, I immediately watched it because I knew I had less than 48 hours before all the screenshots were going live on Twitter. And I was right. Beyond the cultural conversation, this film reignited a much bigger conversation about what streaming companies are doing to theatrical runs and movie theaters. This movie deserved a full theatrical run. I've already said that. And the fact that it didn't get that because Netflix just wanted more money is really upsetting. It's also worth noting that this film is on its way to the Criterion Collection, which is frankly very well deserved. Now, Frankenstein's full scorecard: story A, characters A+, visuals A+, craft A, directing A+, impact B+, for an average of an A. And now perhaps for the most fun movie on this list, Bugonia. Bugonia is outlandish, genuinely, delightfully committedly outlandish. And I mean that as the highest compliment. The message here is very clear from the jump. Teddy operates as this exaggerated, almost feverish manifestation of the fear and trauma. Big pharma, environmental exploitation, worker mistreatment, all of it. And Michelle's company represents all of those things simultaneously. And Teddy is that person that has gone so far down the rabbit hole that he's arrived at a place that is simultaneously so unhinged and by the end of the movie, completely correct. Everything he believed turned out to be true. It ties the whole film together because the film spends the entirety of its runtime asking you to laugh at Teddy, point and laugh. Look how ridiculous this is. To question him, to sit in the confusion of it all. And then it validates him entirely. That's a really gutsy move to end a film, and it lands perfectly. Emma Stone is just fantastic. She is so good at playing characters that genuinely feel distinct from one another, and Michelle is honestly one of her best. There is the scene where Teddy comes back to his house after killing his mother, and Michelle is still there. For whatever reason, she could have escaped, but she's still there. And she's seemingly confessing to being an alien. And that scene is so well written because it's just, your mind is going all over the place. And it is so well performed that it genuinely creates reasonable doubt. She's literally citing things from the Bible. As you start listening and then she talks about the wooden boat, you're like, that's the ark. That's literally Noah's Ark. She's saying things that sound both insane and plausible. That scene alone can sway audiences either way on whether she's telling the truth or whether she's lying. Jesse Plemons is perfect as a man who has lost everything and has nothing else to lose and is desperate, not just for answers, but also for someone to blame. And Aiden Delbus deserves way more recognition than what he gets for his performance in this movie as Dawn. He plays Dawn's hesitancy so precisely that you feel like Dawn. The whole cast has incredible both dramatic and comedic timing, which is exactly what this film needed in order for it to hit the way that it does. The score in this film is also doing a lot of heavy lifting, and it's doing it beautifully. It's grand and it's urgent in a way that escalates the dread throughout without ever really tipping into parody. You really feel the spiral. You are in the spiral and you're going down too. The cinematography also worked really well. Every filmmaking tool available was used to serve the story, and it all fits together very seamlessly. Now, Bugonia scorecard. Story A-, characters A, visuals B-, craft B, directing B, impact C-, all for an average of a B. If you're wondering why things look a little different right now, it's because it's been 8 hours. I have a job. Anyways, let's continue with Train Dreams. I'm going to be completely upfront with you in that I was bored for a significant portion of this film. Now, that does not make this a bad film by any means. And I don't think it's a bad film by any means. I think it's just not for me, and I feel like it's really important to make that distinction. Train Dreams is essentially the story of a normal man's life told very quietly and without a lot of spectacle. And for a very long stretch, it just didn't really feel significant to me. It just kind of felt like everything was really building for a big moment that just didn't really happen. That just never quite arrived the way I hoped it would. I'll also admit, and this may sound a little bit silly, I expected more trains. The title implied that there would be maybe train travel, building of trains, living on trains. What we actually got is Robert harboring a lot of guilt, a lot of quiet and complicated guilt surrounding the death of a Chinese man who was thrown in front of a train during a hate crime. And once his family dies, it kind of feels like that tie to trains just gets really thrown out the window. That being said, there are two moments that really have still stuck with me. The first is when Robert is talking to Claire and they're talking about the griefs of their respective partners and their families, and they just talk about it in such a beautiful way that it just really snuck up on me. And also the scene where he's in the plane. I don't know what about it just made me be like, that's incredible, but that scene was incredible. I did almost cry. Those moments, I feel like those two moments alone are proof of the emotional precision that is put into this movie. And for me, it just took a little while to find it. And that's okay. The setting of this film is genuinely gorgeous. Most of it takes place in a forest surrounded by what I'm pretty sure are redwood trees, which are huge. And I'm just a sucker for a beautiful forest. And just like Marty Supreme, this film simultaneously does and doesn't feel like the era that it's portraying. It doesn't rub 1900s America in your face. It's not exaggerated. The time period is mostly signaled by when the narrator says what year it is, purely as a way to show the passage of time in Robert's life, and it just works really well. I will say, do not watch this movie if you are grieving. And I mean that seriously. There are plenty of films that deal with loss, but Train Dreams goes into the deep texture of grief. The way it takes shape over time, the way it sits differently in different people. I can absolutely see why this film was nominated for Best Picture. It's a quiet film that can be very profoundly affecting. And now for Train Dreams scorecard. Story is a C+, characters is a B-, visuals A, craft B-, directing B, impact B-, for a total average of a B. Now it is time for one battle after another. This movie is almost 3 hours and it absolutely does not feel that way. And that is coming from someone who hates loads entirely long movies. This is genuinely one of the most surprising narrative experiences I've had watching a film in a very long time. It opens feeling really goofy and comedic, almost kind of like chaotic in a fun way. And then it becomes something else almost entirely without you even noticing. The humor doesn't disappear necessarily, it just coexists with something a lot heavier. And by the time you realize how serious this film has become, you're already in it and you don't want to let go. You're along for the ride, you gotta see where it ends. That's to see it through, my boy. And one of the main plots of this town being raided by the military with little to no actual justification, simply because one man told them to, feels like satire. And it is satire. But there's this persistent low-level dread underneath all of it because you know it's real. The exaggeration really isn't that far off. The film is funny and heartfelt and stressful and emotional all at once. And it works perfectly in every single tone that it plays in. Bob does not even feel anywhere close to being Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, he completely disappears into this role. He doesn't look like Leonardo DiCaprio. He doesn't move like Leonardo DiCaprio. The sequence where he's trying to charge his phone and he's on the phone and he's crying is honestly could be considered a masterclass in acting, in physical comedy and character work all rolled into one. He is obviously one of the greatest actors of our generation, and this performance is a reminder of what he can do when the material meets the level that he works at. Regina King was also quietly phenomenal and frankly deserves some more kind of formal recognition for her performance. The way her character arc is handled and the way we never ultimately find out what happens to her is unfortunately fitting for the story that's being told. Chase Infinity was also brilliant. There are scenes where she's in the church with Lockjaw and she doesn't say very much. She barely moves, but her eyes tell an entire novel of story. Sean Penn as the antagonist was very entertaining and honestly not even that annoying. Obviously, he's a weirdo freak, but he wasn't that annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Which is achievement in and of itself. And the way he gets dealt with twice is very satisfying. Now, for one battle after another's scorecard. Story and characters A+, visuals and craft A, directing A-, impact B+, for overall average of an A. Number 6 is F1 the movie. And when I first watched this movie, I was not an F1 fan by any means. I am now. And watching this as someone who now understands what's happening on her screen, completely different experience. Even though I knew exactly what was going to happen in this movie, because again, I had seen it before, I was somehow way more engaged now than I was the first time that I watched this. And that is a sign of great filmmaking. If you can get me overly engaged the second time around, you're great. You must be great. During the final race, I was physically on the edge of my seat. By the time that sequence had ended, I damn near had tears in my eyes. I was feeling real, actual frustration, as if this was a real, actual F1 Grand Prix. And now I'm really starting to think that racing movies might just be the best type of sports movie. Something about the speed and the stakes and the claustrophobia of the cockpit just translates to film in a really visceral way. I really love also that this movie isn't just about the drivers. Yes, Joshua and Sunny are the central characters. They're the main characters. We're following their arc throughout the movie. But the film takes a lot of care to show everyone else, the engineers, the teams, the people whose livelihoods are tied to the outcomes of every single race. It really hammers home the point that F1 is not a solo sport, it is a team sport, which is also one of Joshua and Sunny's core lessons throughout the film. My favorite moment that encapsulates this is when the entire team is doing Sunny's race routine. Even Joshua, they're running around the track like Sunny used to do alone, and they're doing it together to show their growth. It is such a simple image and it says a lot. This is such a beautifully shot film. Shoot me if you want to, but this film is gorgeous. Even though it's kind of neutral and muted in its color palette, it's bright. You can see what's going on. The race sequences, exceptional. The final race in particular, when Sunny is P1 and he's trying to get that final push to the finish line, and then the camera changes so that we're his POV and we're seeing all the turns and the straights, really just communicates how fast these cars go, how much is on the line, how much pressure they are physically and mentally feeling. It is genuinely thrilling, even on a smaller screen. And if this film does not win for best sound design, the Oscars will pay. The audio in this film is unreal. The sound of the engines, the tire squeals, the radio communication, the crowd, the pit, it all layers together into something that makes you low-key kind of feel like you're actually there. I don't have a very technical vocabulary, if you couldn't tell, when it comes to sound design, but I know when something sounds extraordinary. And this film sounded extraordinary. Even at home on like a normal TV, it was really impressive. I can only imagine what it would be like in IMAX with IMAX speakers. And now for the F1 movie scorecard. Story and characters, B+. Visuals and craft, A+. Directing, B. Impact, B+. For an average grade of an A-. For lucky number 7, we have Hamnet. Hamnet is such a quiet film. I feel like I've been loud this whole video, so now I need to be quiet for Hamnet. The pacing is slow and unhurried, and it somehow still stays engaging throughout the entire film. The score never swells dramatically. Characters rarely raise their voices. It just really feels like watching two people who are both different, outcasts, simply living their lives. And I kept trying to figure out why I connected with this film so much more than I did Train Dreams, when they have very similar sort of core themes. It's a quiet life. In both films, they lose someone that's so important to them that it just feels like a piece of them has gotten ripped out. And I think it comes down to the focus, honestly. This film centers a woman, specifically a mother, Agnes, what she feels about her children in life and especially in death. And that just adds another level of emotional precision that really just landed differently for me. It's worth noting that this is also technically a biopic, but it absolutely does not feel like a biopic. It was just so well. I love biopics that don't feel like biopics. Now, the Oscar already has Jessie Buckley's name on it. There is really no other way to say this. Her performance, particularly during and after Hamnet's death, takes this film somewhere that words just struggle to describe. She acts with a pain that feels almost biological. She makes you feel it, not just understand it, but feel it. I also do think that Paul Mescal deserves a lot of credit for what he does in this film as well. The way William grieves is so specific. He's not wailing, he's not breaking down physically that much, and especially not in front of other people. He almost doesn't really know what to do with his emotions. He can't figure out how to offer them to his wife or to his daughters or to his mother or to his brother-in-law. So he turns them into art. And the moment that Agnes finally sees that he's also been carrying the weight of this grief, the weight of this imaginable pain just as much as she has, the way both of them play that scene is the perfect ending to this film. The camera work is genuinely also interesting in this film because it does break a lot of standard conventions for what cinematography does. Normally in a two-person conversation, the camera cuts in between both of them so that you can see who's talking. In Hamnet, there's a lot more empty space. You can often hear a character, but the camera is somewhere entirely different. It does really show Agnes's sort of mental state throughout the film as well. Her head is always kind of somewhere else, and especially when Hamnet dies, she doesn't really know what to focus her attention on. Now for Hamnet's scorecard. Story, B+, characters, A+, visuals, A, craft, B-, directing, B, and impact, C+, for an average grade of a B+. Back to being loud. For number 8, we have The Secret Agent, and I fear I don't really know how to talk about this movie, and not in a good way. I cannot tell you the plot of The Secret Agent, and I watched it. The whole thing. I watched the whole movie all the way through. The story felt like 6 different plot lines happening all at the same time, with characters and stories that didn't really seem to connect together in a coherent way. There were so many threads, and none of them felt resolved or even properly introduced. The timeline was genuinely confusing. It was often hard to tell if we were in a flashback or in the present, and I don't think that this is a case of a film being deliberately cryptic in a rewarding way. It just felt very lost. Here's what I will say though. This is a very beautiful film. It's bright, it's colorful, the costuming feels authentic to 70s Brazil without, again, beating you over the head with what decade it is. Brazil is a naturally vibrant and colorful place, and this film really leans into it rather than muting it for the sake of drama, and I'm genuinely disappointed that I did not like this movie. The premise was exciting. Wagner Moura was great. I think a lot of people were hyping it up, and it just fell completely flat for me. I can't really articulate what I think went wrong because I couldn't really understand what was happening. Maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe I need to make a diagram while I'm watching it. But as it stands, it unfortunately does not give Best Picture. And it is the film that I was most confused and most let down by on this list. For the Secret Agent scorecard, story D, character C-, visuals B+, craft C, directing D+, impact D, for an average grade of a C-. Next is Sentimental Value, which is a film that does a lot with a very little, and I mean that in a genuinely complimenting good way. The premise is honestly deceptively simple. A strained family dynamic between a father who was absent and the daughters who grew up without him. But the film handles it with such nuance and so much restraint that it never feels small and it never feels simple. One of the things that really struck me was how hard it was to actually dislike Gustav, especially once you understand what he's been through. That moral complexity, the kind that makes it genuinely difficult to assign blame, it's really hard to write, and this film really pulls it off. I do wish the sisters had felt a little bit more distinct from one another. I don't think they were meant to be polar opposites, but the differentiation between them could have been a little bit sharper. I also wanted to see Agnes crack a little bit more, rather than hold herself completely together until one of the final scenes of the film. As the oldest daughter, yes, she is going to be trying to hold everything together, but the cost of that composure deserved a little bit more visual weight throughout the film. That being said, I love Nora's arc. Here is someone who has seemingly achieved everything she was supposed to want, and she is deeply, seriously quite lonely. Her achievements don't fill that space, and you can honestly see that parallel in her father too. And the film treats it with real honesty. It doesn't explain it away or resolve it neatly. And Nora, I see you, girl. And now for the Sentimental Value scorecard. Story B+, characters A, visuals C-, craft C, directing and impact B-, for an average grade of a B-. And finally, saving the best for last, Sinners. I could probably talk about this movie forever. I probably could. I'm not even gonna lie to you. This movie is not close to perfect. It is perfect. At just over 2 hours, not a single moment is wasted. Pacing is deliberate and gripping, and it almost functions as 2 films seamlessly stitched together into one complete, breathtaking work of art. I really love the opening. Watching the twins set up and prepare everything for the juke joint gives us a crystal clear picture of who they are and what they mean to the Delta without anyone having to explicitly tell us that these two were menaces. It is the purest form of show don't tell. Another instance of really good show don't tell was how the Chows and Asian Americans navigated a really segregated United States. They are shown navigating back and forth seamlessly between white and black through their grocery stores, which is a detail that could have been a footnote, but instead becomes a quiet, vital piece of the film's very large portrait. And then there's something really deeply tragic about the realization that no one was meant to survive that night. Honestly, for a while it didn't even feel like Sammy was going to make it. And that feeling is a deliberately precise representation as what it means to exist as a black person in the Jim Crow South. The deck was stacked against everyone at the juke joint the moment they walked in. Every single performance in this film deserves an Oscar. And not as a hyperbole. I mean it. Everyone plays together in unison while still feeling very distinct from one another. I found myself also connecting with Remick, which I was not really expecting. The film takes a lot of care to touch on his pain, and he genuinely believed he was offering them something that he could really set them free. And that makes him both simultaneously tragic and terrifying. That moment when Sammy begins to pray at the end, reverting to the very thing he's been trying to run from this entire time. That moment broke me. I thought he was going to bless the water and somehow defeat Remick, and then Remick starts reciting the prayer too, and then talks about how Christianity was also used to colonize the Irish. I cannot adequately describe how the sounds that my heart made. And of course, the best performance in the film came from Michael B. Jordan, because he played two different people. Two completely different people. And much like the sisters from Sentimental Value, they were not polar opposites. They were actually quite similar, but they felt so distinct from each other. They were so different. What do you mean? You played one of the twins to have dimples and the other one didn't? You wore shoes bigger for one of the twins so that you walk different? That is dedication to your craft. That is dedication to the characters. That is dedication to the material that you were given and the impact that you want to have from this film. Give him everything. This movie was made for IMAX and it's still extraordinary on the home screen. The quality holds, the cinematography is stunning in a way that feels purposeful at every single moment, especially the aspect ratio changing. That was such an insane little detail, little tool of filmmaking to use to help tell your story, especially because the aspect ratio is something that in films usually never changes. You pick one, you stick with it, and the aspect ratio changes throughout the film. That's genius. Nothing is very decorative in this story. It all has a purpose. It is all necessary. It's all essential. Everything serves the story. The visuals, the costumes, the music, the score, the set design, the cinematography. Again, everything felt so necessary. Everything felt so, even more than necessary, even more important than necessary. It felt intentional. The best scene in the film, arguably one of the best scenes in recent cinema, is the I lied to you scene, where the building is burning down. And not only encapsulates what the film is about, but it also encapsulates what it feels like to be African American. Music is simply just the heartbeat of this film. And the moments of terror, the score distorts rather than swells, which is a very precise and devastating choice. It echoes the way that trauma really warps one's memory. The collision of the past, present, and future in that scene was just unbelievably beautiful. It shows you how far we've come while making you feel the weight of everything it took to get here. Ryan Coogler, come get your baddie chain, okay? The film that this man has made has been unapologetically and authentically black as hell. Watching him talk through the choices that he made for this film was genuinely eye-opening. The level of care and historical research and intention that went into every single detail is staggering. There is no excuse anymore for these filmmakers to be lazy. He credits everyone who worked on the film. His vision was so clear, so precise, that it translated onto the screen with little to no distortion, and that is rare. This movie lingers long after the credits have rolled for everyone, but it really is that deep. It's much deeper when you are African American. A generational pain and a generational pride that somehow live in the same breath. Everything was taken from us, and we built everything anyways. This film honestly made the Black community just feel so seen in a profound and specific and just vindicative way that we really don't get in film, and now we are getting in film. This film also brought an entire community back to the movie theaters. It showed Black creatives what it looks like to be, again, unapologetically and authentically Black in their art. This is just an instant classic. It is going to be culturally and socially significant for a very, 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 very long time. And I'm not even gonna bore you with the scorecard. Everything is an A+, average A+. Okay, before I give you my final ranking of every movie that was nominated for Best Picture at this year's Oscars, let's do some numbers, because I'm a nerd and I tracked everything. Total watch time, 1,552 minutes. That is 25 hours and 52 minutes of film. In case you were wondering if I have a problem, yes, I do. Average film length was 155.2 minutes. So yes, each one of these films decided that having a 2.5 hour movie was the floor, not the ceiling. The floor. The longest movie was One Battle After Another with 163 minutes. And the shortest one was Train Dreams with 101 minutes. And given my experience, I'm not gonna lie, it felt a lot longer. The total amount of Oscar nominations across all 10 of these films is 80. The lowest amount Multiple of these films have 4 nominations, and of course we know who has the most. It is Sinners with a record-breaking 16 Oscar nominations. Adaptations versus original is exactly 5 and 5. The adaptations are Bugonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, One Battle After Another, and Train Dreams. The originals are Sinners, F1 the Movie, Marty Supreme, Sentimental Value, and The Secret Agent. Rewatches versus new watches. I watched 7 of these movies already before doing this challenge. The only new watches I had were Train Dreams, Sentimental Value, and The Secret Agent. My average star rating across all 10 of these films was 3.95 out of 5 stars. My 5-star films were Sinners and Frankenstein. Unfortunately, my lowest rated film was The Secret Agent at 2 stars. And now for the scorecard data. The highest overall grade was Sinners with A+. The lowest scorecard grade was The Secret Agent with a C-. The average grade across all 10 films was a B+, which honestly feels about right for this group. This was a really good group of Best Picture nominations. And now, for my final ranking of the 2026 Best Picture nomination for the 98th Academy Awards. At number 1, we have Sinners, of course. Number 2, Frankenstein. Number 3 is One Battle After Another. Number 4 is F1. 5 is Bugonia. 6 is Hamnet. 7 is Marty Supreme. 8 is Sentimental Value. 9 is Train Dreams. And last is The Secret Agent. My Best Picture pick is obviously Sinners. If you couldn't guess, it is the most complete, most intentional, most impactful film of 2025, maybe of the 2020s. It is technically flawless. It is emotionally devastating. It is culturally significant in a way that will outlast all of us. Ryan Coogler made something that will be celebrated and studied for decades to come. Frankenstein and One Battle After Another are also unbelievably extraordinary films. And in almost any other year, either of them would have been my pick. But this year, there is just a clear answer, man. There's a clear answer. Sinners is one of the best films I have ever seen. Anyways, that is all 10 Best Picture nominees, and I am exhausted. My eyes are tired. My feelings have been thoroughly processed and then somewhat unprocessed again. If you have watched any of these films, let me know. Let's start with Sinners. Just trust me on that. And if you haven't watched Sinners, go watch Sinners. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Comment and tell me what your Best Picture pick is. I would love to know. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I love you so much. Smoochie. Bye.